I used to believe love was just late for me, that it was taking its time, choosing the wrong trains and missing the right stations, because that explanation was easier than admitting there was something fundamentally wrong with the way people disappeared from my life. And every time I let someone close, something went wrong in a way that felt too cruel to be coincidence, too exact to be cold chance. And yet I kept trying, year after year, face after face, convincing myself that patterns only exist if you believe in them, that fate is just a story people tell themselves to survive disappointment, hoping the next man would be different, that the invisible line would finally snap, that I would wake up next to someone who stayed alive long enough to grow old with me, someone who would leave socks on the floor and forget to replace the empty milk carton, someone boring and real and safe, but safety never stayed. It always slipped through my fingers like smoke. The first man was gentle and soft-spoken, and he loved the way I listened more than I spoke, said it made him feel important, and he died in his sleep without warning. The doctor saying aneurysm as if naming it turned chaos into order, as if that word explained the way his hand was still wrapped around mine when I woke up, warm but lifeless, like a promise that had forgotten how to breathe. The second laughed too loudly and kissed like he was afraid of silence, like he needed noise to prove he existed, and he never came home one night, found in his car days later parked neatly on the side of the road, engine cold, radio still on, as if he had simply chosen to stop being part of the world. The third slipped on a staircase in a building he had climbed 100 times before, his body breaking the quiet of the morning, and the fourth vanished on a foggy walk and was never found. No trace, no well, just a name that slowly stopped being spoken. And every time people gathered around me with the same careful faces and told me I couldn't blame myself, that tragedy happens, that some people are just unlucky, that grief follows me like a shadow. But shadows don't lean closer when you cry, and they don't whisper your name in a voice that sounds almost fond. They don't breathe behind you when you are certain you are alone. And I began to feel watched not by someone else, but by myself, by something that wore my shape better than I did. I started noticing things I hadn't before, details so small they could have been ignored if I had wanted to keep lying to myself, like how mirrors lingered on my reflection a second too long before letting me move again, like how my face sometimes looked older or sharper when I wasn't expecting it, like how strangers occasionally flinched when they met my eyes and then smiled too quickly as if apologizing for a reaction they didn't understand, like how animals avoided me unless they were injured or dying, drawn to me not for comfort but for endings. And how playing cards always seemed to turn over the same way in my hands, no matter how carefully I shuffled, no matter who watched, the Queen of Spades staring up at me again and again, her dark crown cutting into the pale card like a wound that never healed, her eyes calm and patient, as if she knew time meant nothing to her. And I laughed it off because fear dressed as superstition is still easier to dismiss than fear dressed as truth. But the dreams came anyway, relentless, repetitive. Dreams where I stood at the edge of a long candlelit table watching men sit across from me one by one, each smiling with the same hopeful softness, each believing they had been chosen, each reaching for my hand as if touch alone could anchor them, and each dissolving into smoke the moment our fingers almost met, leaving behind only a single card face down on the table. And every time I turned it over it was the same queen, the same symbol, the same warning I refused to read. And I would wake up with my heart racing in the sense that something ancient had just brushed against my thoughts, something patient that had been waiting for me to remember. And still I dated, still I tried, because loneliness can scream louder than fear and hope can be more dangerous than despair. Because admitting the truth would mean admitting there was no version of my life where this ended differently. And then there was him, the one who felt wrong in the best possible way, steady, unafraid. The first man who didn't orbit me like a moth around a flame but stood beside me as if he belonged there. The first who looked at me like I was solid, real, human. And for a brief moment I thought maybe whatever followed me had finally lost interest. Maybe love could override destiny. But the night he told me he loved me, the power went out across the city all at once, plunging everything into a silence so complete it felt intentional. Candles flickered in ways that made my skin prickle. And I saw my shadow stretch across the wall in a shape that didn't match my movements, tall and sharp and unmistakably crowned. And something inside me shifted, settled, like a lock clicking into place, like a memory waking up after centuries of pretending to be asleep. And when they found him days later, the police said there was no sign of struggle, no explanation, no reason to suspect anyone else. Just another inexplicable and tied quietly to my name. And this time I didn't cry, because grief had finally burned itself hollow, and in the silence that followed the whispers grew clearer. Not voices exactly, but impressions, memories pressing through my skin like bruises from another lifetime. Images of women who looked like me but not quite. Women with my eyes and my stillness. Women dressed in different centuries, sitting alone at card tables and candlelit rooms while men fell around them like losing bets. Women who learned too late that some figures are not meant to pair, only to appear. To signal. To vanish. And I understood then that it wasn't punishment and it wasn't a curse. It was inheritance. A role passed down quietly through time. A constant in a world obsessed with love stories that need happy endings. And once you see yourself clearly, there is no pretending anymore. The cards come when they want. The mirrors stop lying. And people feel it even if they cannot name it. The subtle wrongness that curls around me when I get too close. The instinctive chill that makes them step back. Without knowing why. And sometimes, late at night, I sit alone at my kitchen table and shuffle a deck I never remember buying, listening to the soft rhythm of inevitability, watching the queen surface again and again, patient, unhurried, knowing she will always return, knowing I will always draw her, because love was never denied to me, only redefined, because I am not the woman waiting to be chosen, I am the moment before the fall, the final drawer, the silent omen dressed in human skin, there. Queen without a king, the hand no one survives holding, the card you should never turn over. And now that I know what I am, I no longer chase love or run from it. I simply let it come close enough to recognize me, and then I let it go. Because some hearts are not meant to be kept, only claimed. And I will always be alone, not because I failed to love, but because I was never meant to belong to anyone at all.